because something's going on with men.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure what it is. I certainly see responsibility as a big part of it. Like I've had patients who are making seven figures and are suicidal. This is another really interesting statistic. Potentially up to 60% of men who kill themselves may not actually have any mental illness. There's some really fascinating studies on that where we're not quite sure. But I think one of the trickiest things we understand is, or we're starting to understand, and I'm really appreciating as a clinician, is that suicidality doesn't necessarily equate to mental illness. And that especially with the men that I work with, a lot of them, it's not like their mind is malfunctioning. So when we think about mental illness, we think about pathology. This is not the way that it's supposed to function. And for a really long time, I think we just assumed, and we sort of still do, we sort of take suicidality as a mark for, and I definitely think it warrants like a clinical evaluation, because if there is an illness that can be medically treated, like we don't want to miss that by any means. But the really disturbing thing is that some of the people that I've worked with, I wouldn't really, they don't fit the standard profile of something like a mood disorder.
Yeah.
Instead, what I see is a lot of overwhelming responsibility, an attempt to live up to that responsibility, and inevitable failure because the responsibility is inappropriate. And it in many ways, it's similar to what you're describing, but go ahead.
No, I'm not as familiar with the broad patterns, but when you do say that, that matches very much my subjective experience, which is, I think it's possible that there is a generation, and certainly in my neighborhood, there was, of mothers that wanted to heal through having children. When I hear, that wanted, that was their connection point with the world, was to have that child, as opposed to having a connection point with themselves. And then I'll speak only, to my own limited family. There's also the element that I haven't mentioned of the inability to acknowledge, like there's a shame in acknowledging daddy issues if you're a man, or mommy issues if you're a man, because those terms in themselves can feel derogatory, demeaning, or childlike. But my relationship with my dad had a massive impact on who I became. The wonderful things and the negative things, not the negative things, the things. And one element of that was feeling as if I contributed to, like when I saw him working to provide for his family, that I had made his life worse. When I saw his frustrations and holding that he'd be better off without me. And people had different levels of emotional fluency with their dads. For me, mom was the I love you, the hugs and all of that. My dad was catch in sports and he was present. But the tenderness, like there was not that level of tenderness had to dip by age 3, 4, 5, I don't know when, where we couldn't do the hugs anymore. And we couldn't do the sincere depth of I love yous. Like that was inappropriate. And as I look back, it was like, recently I've gotten some of them. I've through some of the work we've done together, like the hugs that he has given me have transformed my life. And I cannot exaggerate I could have done it without it, and it would have taken me a while, but oh my God, receiving some of that and going, he loves me. I have been a gift to him. What a like earth shattering for me to let that in. And I know that everybody has their own different family configuration, of which that may or may not be true for them. But I don't want to reduce everything to the mother wound and the father wound, but that has been a real access point for me to become more soulful, more whole, and to not fall into the categories that you are describing that men are falling into of, self-harm and all those sorts of things.
It's so interesting because so many of the things that you're saying can lead to some of the people that I've worked with. When you kind of say that, to realize that I'm a burden, like that's the first step on a path that can end in a very dark place.
Yeah.
I think the other thing that I'm sort of appreciating is just how touch starved. So society as a whole, this is not exclusively men by any means. I think we're becoming a society where women are also increasingly touch starved.
Yeah.
But men, I think I know so many men who, like you said, like it's kind of weird, but I almost sort of chalk this up to the general homophobia of the 80s and 90s, right? Where I also grew up in a place where gay was a derogatory term. Like I grew up in East Texas. and to be gay was the biggest insult that you could possibly have, and there was just
Yeah.
a complete lack of acceptance. And the other really interesting thing that I kind of noticed when I think about my own life is that it was because of that homophobia that my friends and I were not allowed to touch each other,
Yeah.
right? Like we couldn't hug or we couldn't do any of that stuff. And if you kind of look at, the way we're wired, I mean, we're wired to touch. If you look at like Aboriginal societies and stuff like that, I remember there was, I was in India and this was my first summer in India, and there was one of my friends or mentors was getting married. So I was like 21 at the time. He was like 28 or something. And he had two of his friends like come up to him and they like flanked him on each arm. So he had one arm around each of their shoulders and they
Wow.
were like both rubbing his belly. And they were like cooing at him. I don't know what else to call it. And my East Texas mind was like, what is this?
Yeah.
And they were like joking with him about, oh, you're going to get married now. And they were talking about how he's going to like eat well or something like that. And just that level of touch was just
touching his
completely
belly.
foreign. Yeah. And,
Yeah.
and like, friends in India, like men will hold hands when they like walk, which is a little bit unusual. Right. So like, or at least to me it was.
Yeah.
And so I think that there's a big lack of, you're talking about the healing power of just like hugging your dad. And,
Yeah.
and like, I wonder if that's a huge part of it. Like just,
I think it is. And also like the level of disconnection for me from my body that would have let me know, hey, this is something I want. Like I couldn't even feel the lack of that. We only are aware of these problems because 7 steps down the line, somebody does something dramatic, hurts themselves. But there's also, I mean, even the men that you're describing don't have mental illness. There's an entire, I know them, of successful, high producing leaders that are trying to medicate the internal world with external success. And they're not addicted to drugs in the traditional sense, but they are addicted to that cycle that for me cannot be tended to in that way. At least that's what I have come to learn. And I think it's probably true for them as well. But yeah, there's the other ways in we're not even aware of.
yeah, I think that's well said. And I think the unfortunate thing that I've found, and there's some Eastern teachings to support this, is that I think you have to kind of go through that to recognize its insufficiency. So oftentimes when I work with people in general, I mean, we're talking about men right in a second, but I think it applies to women as well, where, you can't know that something is not going to make you happy until you actually have it. And there's a really interesting kind of conundrum in the East, is if you look at all the people who attained enlightenment. I'm not sure if you're kind of familiar with this concept of like, Buddha became enlightened.
Yeah.
So if you look at all the people who basically are like the religious figures, and if we kind of look at it from a historical perspective, these people were probably enlightened. And the really interesting thing is in India, you have 4 castes, and the highest caste were the Brahmins or the priest caste. And they were the closest to God. They were the teachers of meditation. But there are no enlightened Brahmins. All of the enlightened people were actually from the noble caste. So Buddha was a king or prince. Like the Ram and Krishna, which are considered avatars of Vishnu, are also kings or princes. And so it's really interesting because you would think that shouldn't the priests be the ones that are enlightened, because they're the ones that are teaching meditation. And there's a really simple kind of take on this, which is that you can't really move towards spirituality until you've realized that material pursuits are unsatisfying.
Yeah.
And so just talking about, the journey that you're on, like like, I don't mean to demean your experience, but it's lovely to see how you're on this journey. And it's kind of textbook of like material success, and then kind of like finding yourself, and then like, and once again, I really don't mean to demean it, because I honestly think it's
not
beautiful,
at all.
but
Jim Carrey has that commencement or acceptance speech. He's talking to, I think, college grads, where he says, I hope you get everything that you dream of so that you can realize that that's not the answer. And
Yeah.
I am so grateful to have been able to get those markers early in my life. And so grateful to have done that. And I wish people the success that they imagine, as long as they're not hurting other people. partially for that reason. It's like, I hope you get it. And then you go, oh, is this it? You know, did this do the thing that I thought it would do? But you had said something about men. One thing that I just wanted to mention, somebody brought this up to me and I thought that it was poignant, was that with the exception of perhaps handshakes and the occasional bro hug, a lot of the touches that men receive from other men are violent. And meaning, like, you know, if you're touched, you might, perhaps it's spanked, or it's a knock on your arm, or, you know, God forbid you're molested or something like that. And I have felt, and this is something I had to unlock, that there was a protectiveness in me not extending myself towards other men. I don't want to let that, like, again, a not knowing who I was, confused. Maybe I'm that person. And at times I think I could have let that out with rage. And, so that there's an other protectedness, which is, I'm not going to do that to you. Let me stay in my own private island of not touching and not acknowledge that this is something that I wish that I had in a safer way.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I think that mirrors a lot of my own experience. When I started dating, you know, early on, my girlfriend described what I had as a bubble. And she was like, anytime I get inside the bubble, like, you recoil. And she was very intentional about, like, bursting my bubble. It made me really uncomfortable at the time. I mean, I'm glad that she did it now, but, you know, it's so interesting to think about. I had not quite thought about it that way, but even in my own life, how like touch was like alien to me, like physical touch, until I started dating. And then, you know, it became more normal.
Yeah. For me, I mean, part of it, and I'm working through it still, to recognize, again, because I have the tendency to beat myself up for the ways in which I fall short of a perfect, loving person. If you want to go deeper on this, more confidence, more charisma, and how to show up in a way that has presence in every area of your life, we've built a program that will help you do exactly that. Here's what one student had to say. I went from this very weird person who missed social cues to this guy that could keep a conversation going and make people laugh. The course is called Charisma University. It's had tens of thousands of students go through it, 30 days long, fully guaranteed. If you don't think it was worth it, you get a refund right from inside the program. There's a link on the screen here and in the description. I hope you decide to check it out.